Or amendments to the agenda?
I make a motion to accept the agenda.
There was a couple of things I wanted to just talk about briefly at the Driftway Park, if we have 2 minutes at some point. I think Carol's already got it noted on mine, and I'll give you a little update on some of the trail stuff if we have a couple of minutes. We'll see how lengthy the meeting is. All right?
I make a motion to accept the agenda with the add-ons.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Why don't we get Lisa up on that?
Want to do that one right now?
Yeah.
We have an RDA for Case at 242 Central Ave, extended deck.
Get down there.
Yeah. I can't do it from up here?
No.
No?
You have to recluse yourself.
You have to recuse yourself.
You're no longer,
especially if you're explaining your
commissioner, you're a
project.
homeowner now, when you go sit over there.
On December 11, 2017, during the 6:15 meeting at the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Michael and Lisa Case for determination of applicability to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaw to extend a deck on property located at 242 Central Ave, Humrock. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, what's the project here? I didn't have a chance to take a look at it.
It started with wanting to add a standby generator and couldn't meet the setbacks in the front with the propane tanks and the generator, and then windows and doors. It couldn't be on the south side of the house. It couldn't be on the driveway side. So the only way to have a standby 20-watt generator and the propane tanks was to put it on a deck on the left-hand side. And then,
Excuse me, is that the left-hand side from the street facing the house, Lisa?
yes, when you're facing the house, it's on the left-hand side, which is the northwest side.
Thank you.
So it was kind of like mandatory fund. It's a lot more money to do it this way, but. So I thought that, well, if we're gonna elevate the generator, and then I had an electrician come in, and he said that our electrical panel wasn't big enough, and we didn't have enough space on the wall with the pipes, that we would have to have another place for the electrical panel. So I said, okay, so what do you think of just elevating it and putting it like a little, in a shed on top of the deck? And he said, that's what most people do. So I thought, okay, if we're going to do that, then eventually why not move the hot water heater and, start moving things up off of the main floor.
So you're gonna do 3 pilings?
Yeah, because I didn't want putting pilings into the driveway at this time of year and with water to run in and freeze the pipes. So 3 in the ground, in the rocks, and 1 on the retaining wall.
1 on the retaining wall?
Yeah.
A post will be on top of the.
Yeah, because the retaining wall has a 3-foot,
Footing.
thank you, 3-foot footing on either side. And so the only way it could go was on there.
I'm fine.
Richard?
I'm fine.
Looks good.
Amy?
Amy?
Oh, just out of curiosity, did you do any exploratory work? Did the contractor, I mean, like, do you have pretty good confidence that you're gonna be able to get the post in?
Yeah, Paul Armstrong has done a lot of putting pilings in that whole neighborhood. Matter of fact, the house next to me. And that clears all out in the wintertime when the storms come through. A good 8 feet of that stuff is all gone.
Okay, well, because I don't know, a number of houses down to the south, they were just in front of us about a month or so ago, and they went to go drive piles, and they hit resistance.
Yeah.
So they had to remove them.
My understanding is that pretty much in the area where we live, it's all cobble and sand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, a large percentage of that whole Central Avenue stretch is. There's a lot of houses on pilings.
Yeah.
This one was on Central too, but I guess after 78, they backfilled with large.
Right, no, but I'm saying that's kind of more the exception. If you drive down and look, it's the odd house on foundations, but there's pilings down that whole,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
78's next to us, and that's exactly right. And when you get up beyond Newport Street, it opens up wider and it becomes totally different.
Yeah.
Okay,
78, that's a whole different terrain there.
Well, it absolutely is.
Things
That's
actually
right.
grow, there's soil there. Nothing grows with the exception of what I plant in pots.
right. It's just barrier beach, yeah.
Yeah,
Cobble and sand.
yeah.
Right. I think it's consistent with a -3.
Lisa, do you have this is an architectural plan showing the pilings and the proposed deck and a section, but property line, a plot plan, do you know?
I had a certified plot plan done.
Okay.
And sent it to Bob Vogel. I don't think I brought it here because we don't do property lines.
Well-
I may have a copy in my pocketbook if you want to see it.
I don't need to have it today, but I think it should
It
accompany.
meets the setbacks, if that's
But
what
I
you're
think it
gonna-
should accompany this plan,
The
just
file.
for the file, if you can get a plot
Yeah,
plan.
I think I've got it in my bag.
All right, well,
I'll get to it.
like I say, we don't need it today,
Yeah.
but I think it should be part of this.
Because that's the first thing I did, because I wanted to make sure before I went to the expense of having anything drawn.
Sure.
Make sure we had enough room.
Yep. And then the part that's gonna be the expanded utility room, where is that on the deck?
I think it'll be nicer to people now when they come in.
I'm just asking the
No, I'm
question.
teasing you. This is the driveway.
Yep,
This is northeast. So the deck right now is from here over.
yep,
And so we're just adding this.
I got it.
And the electrical panel and stuff is right here
Right.
in the lower level. And so this is just coming out.
So instead of this here, now there's gonna be something,
Yeah,
Here.
it's gonna be here.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is the chimney,
okay,
closed. And this is the first level.
got it. Okay. Well, I think what you should do is this, and a plot plan should all be part of that RDA. Just,
Right, however, this was just to get an approval for, like a foundation plan for the pilings, so we can get those put in before
yep,
things get hard.
no, I get it.
Yeah, I'm having an overlay done of the certified plot plan over,
Got,
and that way you'll be
Yep.
able to see that. But my architect had knee surgery, so he was out of commission, and then I had mine, so I was out of commission.
it's,
It's dominoes.
it all makes sense. It just, those couple of things should be in the folder, that's all.
Not a
All
problem.
right,
Okay.
agreed? Okay.
I make a motion.
Anybody in the audience?
I make a motion for a -3.
Second.
Second with those things added.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, we can roll right into NOIs. Hadley Country Club, 667 Hadley Road, is continuation.
Hey, Jeff Hassett with Morse Engineering, and this is an NOI filing for a septic repair at Hatherley Country Club for the clubhouse itself. They have a septic system and they've been experiencing some trouble with it, so we've designed them a new system. It's made up of a 4,000-gallon grease trap. You need a grease trap for any kitchen flow, followed by an 18,000-gallon septic tank. That'll be a new tank. And then there's an existing 10,000-gallon tank that we'll reuse. And then that will flow by gravity to a Presby leaching field, which is about 100 feet by 70 feet in size. As far as wetland resource areas, there are no vegetated wetlands in or around this project, so they're greater than 100 feet away. However, this portion of the property is within the floodplain. It's an AE elevation 14, I believe. It is land subject to coastal storm flowage, so the fill that's being brought in for the leaching field won't have any adverse impact on compensatory flood storage. than that, we do have a siltation fence going around the limit of the work. And the area will be, it'll be reseeded and it will become grass after. There are 3 trees that need to be removed. Other than that, yeah, it's all grass. We are waiting on additional comments from the Board of Health, so we'd like to kind of hear your input on it, but we're not looking to close the hearing this evening.
Penny?
Is that in the front of the clubhouse, to the south side of the clubhouse?
It's to the rear when you're looking from Hatherley Road.
From Hadley Road? Oh, it's behind the clubhouse? So back?
Yeah, so it is going in this area here.
Oh, okay, yeah, between them, oh, okay. Yeah,
Pass that down.
yeah. Can they just look at it
Yep.
too? Okay.
So the opposite side of the building, when you're
Right.
looking at the building.
No, near,
The parking
close
lot
to
or
the
from
mine.
Scituate.
Oh, it's going in here,
Okay.
okay. I don't have any
That's where I
questions.
thought it was.
Yeah, Richard,
Oh, I'm good.
So it's really in front of the maintenance building?
yeah, between
Yeah.
the two. Looks like to me.
A lot closer to the clubhouse building, but between the two.
Yeah. Paul?
It looks good.
Lisa? Jen? Amy, any?
No, what, Jeff, what are the, what's the nature of the comments with Board of Health? Been working on, 'cause I know this has been on the agenda for a while now.
Yeah, we had to do additional soil testing, which we did, and we are considering shifting the location of the septic by maybe 15, 20 feet, just based on the folks at the Hatherley Country Club.
Where? Which
No, that would make a
direction?
difference, or it could make a difference.
Honestly, I'm not totally sure. It has to do with working around the tee boxes and the greens, and the grading as well.
Oh, is it, you don't know if it's gonna go closer to the house?
Oh, well, we're very far away from the marsh. It's kind of a just fine tuning. We
Okay.
might move it a little bit one way or the other.
Okay,
It won't move very much at all.
okay.
I mean, if you look at this, Penny, and look at that plan, it's a good distance away.
Yeah. Well, he said 10, 15 feet it might be moved, so I'm.
Yeah, but even,
That,
that shouldn't be a problem.
no.
I think I'd recommend keeping it open.
Just in
so
case.
that Revised plan comes in, final plan.
Okay.
And you're with it here because it's within 100 feet?
No, because we're in the floodplain.
Excuse me.
Okay, anybody else in the audience? So,
I make a motion to continue the Hadley Country Club to January 8th at 6:15. Hopefully it should be pretty quick.
Great.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can I have that plan?
You can. Why don't you keep that with it?
I will. Okay, yeah.
He had a new baby.
Can somebody say that for me?
Kevlar?
Kebler, thank you. 104 Edward Foster Road, extend crushed stone driveway. On December 11th, 2017, at 6:20 PM, the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Susan and Chris Kebler to extend a crushed stone driveway on property located at 104 Edward Foster Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Hello.
Notification to abutters?
Yes.
Should be all in here.
Okay.
I have a small plan if you want a smaller plan. I bought your own personal copies if you would like them.
Take one or two, sure.
Would you like your own personal copy?
Yeah, this,
Sure, thank you. We can share this over
You
here.
share that one, or you have one?
Oh, yeah.
You have one pulled up? Yep. My name is Tish Campbell. I'm a landscape designer representing the Keblers at 104 Edward Foster Road. They would like to extend their driveway to make a crushed stone driveway. They are, the property sits between the marina and the ocean. So it is part of coastal storm flowage in this area. The marshes over in this area, we have a 50-foot and 100-foot zone. They really wanted to have an asphalt driveway. We told them that the best thing would be a pervious driveway of crushed stone in this area. So we have designed a small area here for parking and a turnaround this way so that they could exit, you know, in a safer way onto Edward Foster Road because it gets kind of busy, and then their guests will be able to have a place to park should they have guests who come and not park on Edward Foster Road. So the base course of the crushed stone will be a crushed stone driveway for some part of this area in order to get it to perk into this area here. We have designed a rain garden. I have a small detail of a rain garden that way, if you want to see a picture of that. There's a detail for your rain garden. A rain garden detail. I think there's two.
Thank you.
So the parking area here drains all into the rain garden this way with all the plants here. This extension that way is constructed so that it drains into the neighboring lawn areas. The area as it is now is already disturbed. It's just a front lawn type of area. It's not native or anything like that as it is. It's about 1,500 square feet that we would be disturbing and replanting it again with about 1,500 square feet of plants that way. And then this area would be returned back into the lawn area as it exists now.
Where's the 50? Where's the line for the 50?
The 50 is here. 100
The marsh is across the street
across.
and the harbor.
Okay.
You got wetlands and bank on both sides.
Yeah.
This one here.
So the velocity zone is up over on the other side, and then this one is just the AE zone in this area that way.
Is the existing driveway asphalt? It's already there?
This one, yes.
Be nice if they made that crush too. Nobody should have asphalt over there. Richard?
I agree. But that isn't what they're asking.
I know. Well, I'm just making a point. I'm
Paul?
shocked
You
we
gave them good
haven't
advice,
had
though,
that.
not to try to put asphalt.
Not to try
Yeah.
to put asphalt.
No, it's a disturbed area, it's pervious, they're gonna make it pervious, I don't see a problem.
Unless Amy has an issue.
Lisa?
How many proposed, the proposed driveway, how many square feet?
That's about 1,500, so exactly 1,518.
Okay, and that driveway is going on existing lawn, you said?
Yes, this driveway is going on existing lawn. So there's a gate and a gap in the hedges because apparently it was in the plan originally to have a driveway that would go over that way. So it reads as if there is a driveway there, but it's just lawn.
Yeah.
Jen?
We just redid that house a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Amy? Thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I don't have substantive comments either. So you're not, you won't need a new curb cut
No.
on that
No.
side, right? Yeah.
So there's a granite apron that already exists in this way, I guess, because it was supposed to be a driveway in the original.
No, I know. Good thing she
Yeah,
didn't.
I mean, a small portion of it is
I-
within the
I'm
50,
sure.
but it's the resource areas across the street, it's already been disturbed. They are compensating with the stormwater controls, with the rain guarding and
Yeah.
nice
Yeah.
plantings, so
All good.
things are pretty
It
straightforward.
should be good.
Anybody in the audience to speak to this?
Any issues, Frank?
No, I don't think so.
Then I'll make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank, do you want to make a pile for Amy over here, or do you want to keep it in front of you?
I was gonna hang on to that. You can go ahead and put that one over there. You've got a cross-section of the rain garden. Just leave those. All right? Thank you.
I guess you want to throw it up.
Take it.
Norton, so we're gonna pick up on that one.
So Norton has apparently requested, 23 Sunset Road has requested a continuance. If anybody is here for that, we will continue it, and they've requested it be continued for 3 months or until the first meeting in March.
No. I'm willing to continue it for 1 month, but this has been going on long enough, and I feel if we give them another month, that's more than ample
And that is
for
what we
them to do
discussed.
something. 3 months, I mean, we're going over a year with this project. But that's my feeling. I don't know about
I
the
think we
rest of the board.
discussed this 1 meeting or 2 meetings ago
Yeah.
and told them that
I
we
know,
would not
and
go ahead.
nothing had happened, so I personally would be willing to give them 1 more month to square this away, but not 3.
What happens if we don't continue it?
It gets,
Yeah, I mean, things can get pretty sticky, so I'm gonna recommend continuing
Okay.
for 1 or more months as they requested at this point, because it does appear that they're trying to work things out, work things through.
What is the delay?
I believe it's financial, but I'm not 100% sure, so I can reach out and ask for
Yeah,
clarification.
I think it was Greg that indicated he thought it was, but that's still hearsay, really.
But there's no action on, there's an enforcement order,
There
right?
is an enforcement order, and
So
that-
this isn't going anywhere without
yeah.
enforcement order
Well, that's
being
kind of what we're
dealt
waiting
with.
on.
Right,
And if need be, in a month, we can revisit it.
yep.
I just don't like giving an extended period where we've really gotten nothing for months.
Now, a procedural question, could we vote to close?
No.
you can't close an
You
enforcement
could,
order.
but I'm not gonna
No, no, no,
recommend that.
this isn't for the enforcement order,
This is for the,
Right.
the NOI.
Because if you did, then you'd be forced to close and then either issue
Right,
or deny.
correct.
So those would be your options.
So could
But
you
if
do that?
You could, yeah.
Okay, well, how about this? We'll continue it for a month, but if they don't come in a month, then they run the risk of us denying it.
yeah, closing.
Yeah.
Or
You deny.
closing?
Yeah,
You could
Right.
do either way, yeah.
yeah, as long as it
I'll
doesn't
give them
negatively
1 more.
impact the
It's
enforcement order.
Christmas time, we'll give them a month.
Jen?
I agree with Penny.
And I make a
ahead.
motion.
So a month, so are we going to the 8th or are we going to the second
No, we're
meeting in
going to the
January?
8th.
Yep.
Okay.
The 8th. So I'm going to make a motion that we continue 23 Sunset Road, Norton, to January 8th at 6:35.
All those in, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So if anybody is here, has come in for 23 Sunset, it's been continued to January 8th. Hopefully you're not here for that, because you would have wasted your trip.
No, they're all still
Uh,
sitting.
Kelleher, 10 Pin Oak Drive, his request for a continuance, 1 month to January 8th.
Yep, I make a motion, we continue 10 Pin Oak Drive to January 8th at 6:40.
Second.
Amy, when you're talking to them about that too, I mean, that started out as sort of an
I know.
enforcement letter. They told us they were gonna file
God bless you.
to get this squared away. The can's been kicked down the road a little bit, so that really should happen. Then otherwise, we need to start to look and decide whether we want to issue an enforcement order. I mean, we held off because we were told they were gonna give us plans and get that all wrapped up, and we've been working with them on that, but I think that's one that shouldn't get pushed off any further,
Right,
all right?
yeah. Jeff was here, I don't know if he's
Yeah.
still here, but,
He figured something else was coming down the road, so we get out of here.
right, what's been conveyed to me on that one is that there is an encroachment issue on the abutting property
Hmm,
to the left, as you look at the house, I believe.
yeah,
So they're trying to work out what the mitigation should be with the other property owner
okay,
as well, so enroll that into what they're gonna come back with. But they also owe us stormwater, so
right.
I agree with you though.
Yeah, I think it's time to pull that in, or at least someone should be here and explain where they're at and what they've done. And I mean, it looks stabilized, everything's cleaned up, but there still are some outstanding issues, and just keep pushing it down the road. It's nowhere.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Young, 18 Lowell Street, 7-bedroom septic, add 1 story, and there, so we need to open that and then get a continuation. On December 11th, 2017, at 6:30 PM, at the Town Hall, the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Jeffrey and Jen Young to repair a septic system and add an additional story on a house on property located at 18 Lowell Street, Hummerock. Others and other interested parties are invited to attend. So do we have any green cards or anything?
He brought them in earlier.
Okay, great.
So a month out, January 8th.
Do you know what they wanted for a continuance, Amy?
January 8th.
Okay.
Okay, I make a motion, we continue 18 Lowell Street to 6:45 on January 8th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Fitzpatrick, 43 Collier Road, raise, rebuild. This is a continuation. If there's folks in the audience that want to see this one, maybe they can shift over a little bit or something. Can you see enough of that, Tony?
I've got a plan, it's the revised plan.
Paul Rivera from Harrison Engineering Company, representing the owner of the applicant for the proposed project at 43 Collier Ave. This is our raise and rebuild The house will be placed on wood-driven piles to conform to the new FEMA flood regulations. After our last hearing, the project was sent out for a peer review by Jim O'Connell, coastal engineer. We've made several changes to the plan, which I did outline in the cover letter that I sent to you, and I'd like you to just go over them quickly. You recall there were two retaining walls, one on each side property line, one in this location and one down here for grading purposes. Those have been removed. There was an open deck at the rear of the house in this location, which has been since removed, and there's a set of stairs coming off of a open deck in the middle of the house leading to the easement area. We've also added a detail of the fill that will be going underneath the house, which I'll explain in a few moments. The top of the coastal bank, based upon the report from Jim O'Connell, we show the top of the coastal bank up by the property line of the street, which is following more or less the 16-foot contour in that general area. Jim also identified the rocky coastal dune down in this area, which we agree with. There is a rocky beach in this area, which is off the site that I mentioned. What we've done is, at the last meeting, I think I had estimated roughly 1,200 cubic yards of fill. That's been reduced to about 400 cubic yards. And the fill would be underneath the house, and it'll be in the driveway that will slope from the street up to the house, and then there'll be some loom in the front yard as well to have a lawn and some planting beds in this area here. There's also a lawn area, or perhaps planting beds down by the existing concrete wall, which is going to remain in place. What we've done with the fill is the top of this wall is elevation 13. We're going to hold the top of that wall and slope it back about 2% to elevation 14. That's simply to allow any water that comes in to flow back toward the ocean. We're proposing to put the fill in here as required with a processed gravel, which would be compacted, and on top of that we'll have approximately 4 inches of crushed stone underneath the house. So when you walk into the house, it'll look like a fairly flat area. The front yard will be sloping from the front of the house out toward the street. There's also a swale proposed for the right side of the yard to direct the water down in this direction, which it is currently doing at the present time. But with the regrading, this swale will be more visible than what's there now. This is the existing house to the right of us, which is fairly close. Right now, the contours on this plan are going in this direction. The water's all flowing from the northwest to the southeast, as opposed to straight down from the street. This existing driveway is going to be closed off. The stormwater from the street flows right past us. There's a small spill berm in the road. There's an existing catch basin in this area, and there's one further up the street as well that collects the stormwater from the street. In this existing 25-foot wide easement area, we're going to keep the existing grading as it is for about 80% of it from the left side over toward the house. This is the closest contour that for a grade change. All the elevations of the land in this area are going to remain the same. This is where people can walk down through the side of the property and out to the spit. This existing wall on the abutting property will also remain in place for obvious reasons. The water from our site is flowing away from this anyways. It's going straight down toward the water. Again, the purpose of this is to hold the wall here, the top of the wall, and slope it back at a flat rate. And then in the front of the house, we have the U-shaped wall for the driveway. What we've added is a wall in the front of the house here for grading purposes. What we're going to, the top of this wall is elevation 17, which is also the top of the velocity zone. if you were under the house, you'd be looking at the ground elevation of 14, the top of the wall would be 17, it'd be about 3 feet above the ground underneath the house. There's very little fill going into this area where the house is. The garage down here is about elevation 10. The existing grade, this is the 10-foot contour. We're going to, proposed grade here will be about 13 and a half. This is the lowest part of the land, and from here, it actually rises up here, and it rises up toward the street. So by lowering the grade below the house, and by putting this wall in here, we've been able to reduce the fill by about 800 cubic yards. We're going to keep this wall in place, and again, we're keeping the grading in this area here. None of this water coming onto the site or off the site is going to go onto the abutting properties. For 2 reasons. One, the grading hasn't changed here, and we're going to put a swell in this area here, which is more well-defined than the current one at the present time. I should also point out this breakwater here, which is fairly large, the top of that is elevation 14. The velocity zone on the new FEMA map is 17, so theoretically, the waves could come all the way up here to the intersection of Lincoln Ave and Collier Road. But by putting this wall here, which is a vertical buffer, and one of the criteria, one of the attributes of a coastal bank is that it acts as a vertical buffer for storm damage. By having the wall here for the driveway and putting this wall here for landscaping, it would ensure that this would act as a vertical buffer to prevent any storm damage from here up toward the street. So I think that's an added benefit that wasn't there before. So with that, I'll end and answer any questions you may have. Oh, one other thing, by reducing the fill and changing, we were able to reduce the impervious area down to 6.9% from what it was before. Thank you.
You got to do us, go to Jim.
Do that. We've had, as Paul pointed out, Jim O'Connell has reviewed the project for us, so maybe this is a good time for Jim to give his thoughts on this.
Take on it. I don't
Yeah, I want to add that
any fill.
we received the revised plan, I think last Tuesday, so.
No. The revised
we're
plan?
still in kind of processing it.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, for the record, Jim O'Connell, coastal geologist and a certified floodplain manager with Coastal Advisory Services. I was retained by the commission to do a peer review of this project. Based on this is like, I think the 3rd or 4th revision, but the revisions that I see up to date so far, I think have been very beneficial to the project, positive in terms of changing the, what was a impermeable driveway to a pervious driveway, particularly removing the wall, the vertical wall over here, which was in the velocity zone, which could cause some unpredictable significant impacts, and removing the wall over here. So in elevating the house above the base flood elevation to velocity zone standards, I think are all very beneficial to the property owner as well as protecting the resources. It's a complicated site in terms of what they're proposing to do, particularly the fill in the velocity zone, significant fill in the A zone. So I wanted to show this to you because I want to show you precisely what my thinking was in terms of what's going to happen to the coastal storm flows. There are no performance standards, as you know, in the state DEP regulations for land subject to coastal storm flows, but you do have performance standards in the Scituate wetlands regulations for floodplain, coastal land subject to coastal storm flows, and that's basically what we're going to be reviewing it under. There is a clause in the state wetlands protection regulations at 10.24 that somewhat allows the commission to apply standards that they think are appropriate to protect the beneficial functions of a resource area that doesn't have performance standards, land subject to coastal storm flowage. In reading that provision, I know the state folks are out doing workshops saying that the commissions have the ability to apply standards when performance standards don't exist for a resource area. But if you read that first sentence in 1024 very carefully, it says if it has a preamble, land subject to coastal storm flow, which is the wetlands regulations, doesn't have a preamble, so to me, it's a little gray area. But the point is that you do have performance standards for land subject to coastal storm flow in your local wetlands regulations. So I was principally looking at what's going to happen to the, here's the site, obviously. Here's the existing building here in purple, and then the yellow basically is the outline of the proposed new house and the decks as well. This blue line across here separates the velocity zone from the A zone, ocean being down here, Collier Road up here. So we've got B zone, seaward of the blue line, we've got A zone, landward of the blue line, and the A zone basically principally comes up to here. The resource areas you have is not only land subject to coastal storm flowage, but you've got two coastal banks on the property. One that Paul identified, which was up in this area, which he delineated the top of the coastal bank. I hate the word issue, but this sentence here, which says it's not a sediment source or a vertical buffer to storm waves. Well, if it's a coastal bank, it has to be one or the other. It's a vertical buffer to storm waves. It's not eroding, it's not providing sediment, so basically it's a vertical buffer. And I'll get to the performance standards on that shortly. So we've got a top of a coastal bank here, but you've also got another coastal bank right in this particular area here, which I identified in the November 16 report. This basically is, meets the criteria of DEP policy 92-1. It's greater than 10 to 1, less than 4 to 1. So the top of the coastal bank would basically be the 100-year flood elevation, but you can see that the flood elevation basically, the AV zone line bisects that, but the whole thing is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. So there is a coastal bank in this area here. The proposed fill is going to basically eliminate this coastal bank here. The vertical concrete wall that they're proposing here is going to replace the function of this vertical coastal bank here, and I'll talk about my opinion of compliance with those two in a minute. But I was primarily interested in how is this fill going to change the flow velocity of waves in the V zone. And a 3-foot wave doesn't stop here. It continues landing. So there's an area in here that's also what we would call a coastal A zone, although it's not mapped because FEMA won't map it if it's less than 100 feet. So we have 3-foot waves under 100-year storm conditions coming up to this part of the property. And we've got some wave activity in here, and it's unclear on how far that 1.5 to 3-foot wave would cascade, but you're going to have wave activity in here. So what I was thinking was, how is this fill going to change the direction, the velocity, and the elevation, particularly of the V zone, but also in the A zone where I anticipate there's going to be moving water? How is that going to change those parameters, and will it be an impact to adjacent public or private property? So what I did was, I looked at the contours. No model, no coastal engineering can model something like this and tell you where the waves are going to go. It's a very complex site. We've got this attached breakwater down here. You've got this vertical, 3-foot vertical concrete wall here. So, and then you've got various contours. So the wave action and the movement of the water is going to be very complicated. But if you look at the contours as they exist today, I can look at the contours and I can provide a professional opinion on where I think the water is going to flow. So the existing because of the existing contours, this is the 3-foot. So the only place before this wall is overtopped, the only place where you're going to get coastal storm flowage on this particular property is really through this narrow area here. But when you've got this overtopping and you've got this area filling in here, you're going to end up with water coming around the vertical concrete wall before it gets to the elevation where it'll start to overtop it. It's at elevation 13. So the existing contours I'm looking at, the water comes in here, but this depression in here is only 10 feet. They're going to fill it to 14 feet, as Paul said. Fill it to 14 feet on top, then they're going to grade it down to 13 feet. So you're going to have a very mild slope. But you've got a 10-foot depression in here. So what I'm looking at is the coastal storm flowage water is basically going to come here. It's going to pool into this 10-foot area because we've got elevations arising here. We've got elevations rising up here on this coastal bank. So basically the water ends up pooling here. When that wave gets overtopped, I think it's important that when the wave overtops, it's going to hit this depression. And generally, if you look at the orientation of the attached breakwater and the way the waves are refracting around Third Cliff, the waves are more than likely going to hit at some angle, coming in at this angle here. So it overtops the wall, gets caught in the depression. The water will more than likely flow somewhat in this direction here. But this coastal bank here, although it's small, it's only 3 or 4 feet high, it's going to reduce the flow velocity of that water as it cascades here. The house is on a solid foundation. The house is basically acting as a wall to protect this property right now. Elevating the house, I think, is a very, on open pipe, is a very appropriate thing to do in the B zone, and you have to do it based on the state building code and flood insurance programs. You've got to elevate it. I think it's a real benefit to do that to the property owner and to the resources. So you've got to elevate that. Now, once they elevate this house, if you leave the contours the way they are, when the waves overtop the wall, they're going to hit these contours. They're going to refract a little bit here. But this 2 to 3 to 4 foot elevation here, this coastal bank here, I believe is going to slow the velocity of the movement of the water under the house towards this house, towards the house on the south side. So this coastal bank, I think, is playing a role, more than likely a minor role, because once the wall gets overtopped and the waves start to come onto the property, they're going to refract a little bit and head this way under the house. When that's happening, this house is already going to be, the waves are already going to be inundating this property here as well. So they're going to be already flooded by the time that happens. But my main point is that this small coastal bank, I think, is playing a role with the existing contours in dampening to some degree wave action and wave energy forces. So by filling this in, they're going to fill it basically to the elevation of this wall. So there'll be no, basically there'll be no more flooding until the water hits the elevation of this wall, starts to overtop it. But you're going to get significant wave activity in here. So when you fill it, you get basically, it's going to be a 1 foot drop between the landward side and the seaward side here. It's going to be a 1 foot drop. But you're going to create a flat surface. Once the waves overtop this wall, I think that flat surface is not going to break up wave energy as much as this small little coastal bank is. With the gravel and the crushed shell, you're going to get a lot of friction, so you are going to get wave dampening even with the fill material, which is important. But my point is, to me, this is playing a role. It may be a minor role, but it's playing a role in dampening wave energy while it cascades under that house towards this piece of property here. So I think this coastal bank here is relatively important. To what degree? It will dampen wave energy. I don't think to a great degree, but it will dampen wave energy, which kind of complicates your decision. So I think that coastal bank is playing a role, number one here. This coastal bank here, they're going to replace the function of this coastal bank basically with this wall, which is going to go to elevation 17. It's a vertical buffer coastal bank. It's not providing sediment to do into the beaches. The state regulations allow you to armor a vertical buffer coastal bank and say you may allow arming of a vertical buffer coastal bank. I think basically this wall is going to replace the function, and the fill behind it is going to replace the function of this coastal bank. It's almost 6 of one, half of another. I think basically we're balancing it out. I don't really see a major issue with this wall here. It's going to replace the coastal bank, but I don't think it's going to cause really any significant impacts to flooding on public or private property. So I have a great issue with that as well. I'm curious about the stormwater coming down this road, and I've heard Paul say that there's no water going on that property. I don't know if there is or not. I did submit a report today, and I do have photographs of this road here. There are two catch basins, basins down here that do capture the stormwater. But the berm along here is only about 6 inches high. I don't know the volume of water that's coming down this road and going on this property. So I can't answer the question of whether or not that's going to shed some of the water over to this area here. But you've already approved this vertical wall here on this piece of property here. So if there were water coming down here, because of the fill, you're going to somewhat divert some of the water in this area to the north. But you've got this vertical wall, so I don't really see what's going to happen based on the contours. If the water were to overtop the wall, it's going to hit this fill here. And it's basically because of the contours, it's going to orient it down into the 25-foot easement. I don't really see that as a real negative. I don't think the water velocity is going to be such that it's going to cause any significant impact. But I do see it curious. Paul's saying there's no water coming into this property at all. I do see curious. We have a swale over here. And we've got contours over here. Maybe this is for walking off the lawn, I'm not sure. But these contours, if there is rain coming off the road, basically will orient that runoff, if it's coming onto the property, down into the easement area. So I don't really see that causing a real significant impact. So I think my main point is, I think that this small coastal bank here is playing a role in dampening some of the wave action, particularly in the B zone, in what I would consider a wave area, 1.5 to 3 foot wave. So I think we could work something out on that. I think that would be good. But I don't think I think the fill creating flat surface is not going to dampen it as much as this little basin here in this coastal bank, existing coastal bank, in the area under the proposed house.
Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
Jim, I want to be very clear, because I questioned right from the get-go when I realized there was fill. So am I understanding that it would be better without the fill under the house? I don't see the reason for the fill under the house.
Yeah.
To me, there's absolutely no reason to bring fill into this property. As long as the pilings are even on top, that's where the house is going.
It's an interesting question you asked, because there's two answers to that.
Okay.
One, it's the benefit to the property owner.
Well, that's not my concern.
I realize.
Yeah.
I need to tell you everything I'm
Right.
thinking. Because there's a lower basin here where the water could possibly pond and cause a lot of turbulence under the house. In terms of protecting flow in this direction here, the fill, I think, will diminish the protective quality
Yeah.
of this particular coastal bank, as small as it may be, it's only 2 to 4 feet high. But it is playing the role. So I think the fill will possibly cause more flood flow in this direction under significant storm conditions, 100-year storm conditions.
Right, okay. That was just,
Okay.
Frank,
Paul?
while he's standing there, you know, as far as the elevation of the land, this house, it's my understanding that this house was elevated after the storm of '78, and this is a man-made coastal bank. If you look at the elevation, the elevation under the house is proposed at 14. This is the existing 14-foot contour. The top of that wall is 13. What I did was to come back at 2%. So any water that may want to flow over the gravel could come in this direction. Over here, some will come in this direction. But if you look at the elevations of the land here, this is a 13-foot contour in front of the house. This is the 14-foot contour. The 13-foot contour is over here. Once this house is gone, and you have the piles here, if you don't put the fill here, the water's going to come in here and go straight at that house. If we put the fill in here, what's going to happen is there's a berm. The wall is 13, the ground is 10. This elevation in here is 13. What it'll do is when the water comes in, it's going to force it to come up into here, or it's going to go up against this wall, which is your new vertical buffer. This is your new coastal bank. This land in here, once the house is gone, it's going to be the same elevation as the land here. There's nothing to protect it. If this wall stayed here that we had and we built it up, then it would clearly stop water going this way. But even if you don't put the fill in here, well, you know, once this house is gone and it's on piles, the elevation of this land here is the same as is the same elevation of the existing ground. I think putting that fill in there by leveling this off forces the water to come in here. Absent any storms, when the tides come up, the water comes in here and it goes between the wall and this easement, and it comes up and it would go in this way here. Once it goes above 13, without wave action, it's going to overtop this and then come under the house. But I don't know what the effect of this breakwater is. I mean, this is elevation 14. If the waves are at 17, and you've got a valley here, and then you got another wall, isn't this going to break the wave so the energy wouldn't be as strong as it would be if this wasn't here? I mean, this is breaking the waves.
It will significantly break the waves. I think it's a real plus for everybody along there to have that there. But the point is, I'm going on FEMA's flood insurance rate maps, and I'm looking at they're saying that this area here is subject to 3 foot, at a minimum of a 3 foot moving wave behind the landward of the breakwater. The breakwater is tremendous, yeah. So you've still got 3+ feet of breaking wave on the lot itself, under the proposed house.
But you would have that anyway. I mean, without the fill, you'd still have a 3-foot wave coming out of this property.
What you said is precisely my point, actually. Because the lower elevations under the house, unfortunately, will cause turbulence, and it will help break up any wave energy on that particular lot, preventing any additional water where you fill it from cascading to the southern property.
But once this house is gone, even if this wasn't filled, the water's still gonna go right at that house, because there's nothing there to block it anymore.
Correct. But that coastal bank there, and the 10-foot depression in the coastal bank is the depression and is the existence of that slope, coastal bank, will that break any volume of, any energy of wave going to the south? Will it dampen any wave energy? I'm asking you.
In my opinion, probably not. You know, relatively speaking, when you look at the size of that compared to the ocean, I think it's too small. That's just my opinion. This is way too small to have that effect on it. I mean, it's a big ocean. And this is a tiny spot in it.
I think there's going to be a lot of turbulence along the
the
whole area.
You know, this is the existing garage, which is elevation 10. The grade here would be about 13 and a half. So right here, you'd have about 3.5 feet, but once you get away from here, you know, the fill here is only a half a foot. It's gonna be about 2 feet here. And this is where most of the fill would go, right in that one depression. Once you get over in here, there's very little fill. And then the rest of it's up in here for the landscaping.
To clarify things, I agree, there's going to be great turbulence there, and it's already going to be happening on that property. But my question to you is the existence of that coastal bank slope, will it dampen wave energy relative to the fill you're proposing to put in? And we can talk degrees, and we don't know degrees, but in my opinion, the existence of that coastal bank is going to help diminish some of the wave energy as it's cascading towards the southern house. If you put the fill in, you're still going to dampen some wave energy because of the composition of the fill, but that's going to dampen the wave energy more so than the fill, in my opinion.
But, you know, once this house is down, you're up on piles. I mean, it's, you know, it's always hard to predict what these bigger storms are going to do. Because the land is sloping in this direction right now, the water's still going to go in this direction as it comes up, so.
Maybe in layman's terms a little bit, if that ground is sloping or uneven, as opposed to being filled and a level grade, that would tend to slow down that wave action as opposed to filling it in and making it level so that the water would just move right across it, I think is the...
And it's slow moving, it's slow moving, and I'm sorry.
There's a coastal bank there.
At 13, right, Jim? Right in front of the front door, kind of right in the existing house, right here.
Right in here, yeah.
So it's keeping this at the 10 and going up and making that resistance when it goes uphill.
Correct.
So we can leave that.
Project.
It's under the house, I mean,
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
end of the day.
I have a question for Jim. So the first step...
You two guys should probably just introduce yourselves.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm the homeowner.
Yeah.
Ken Fitzpatrick.
Steve Gard, attorney for the homeowner. The first step would be that the 10-foot depression area would flood. That would be the first step of a coastal issue. And then over the top, the waves would start to flow. I was wondering, how does the 3 feet of water that's now standing in the 10-foot area affect the wave action under the house, as opposed to if it was filled with dirt? Wouldn't there be, I mean, there's more friction when the bottom of the ocean is closer to the top of the wave to slow down the wave. So now we've got 3 feet of water in that pool. Now the water's breaking over the top of the wall. How does that affect the coastal bank's effectiveness, I guess?
It's as the water is moving south. I'm looking at it from a standpoint of, is it going to increase any adverse impacts? To what degree we can debate, but I'm looking at it, is this fill going to create wave energy or not diminish wave energy? What will it do to the neighboring property, to other private property? And what I'm looking at is not just a depression. Depression will fill with water, the waves will come in and they'll slosh around there. But it'll slosh around, and if it's trying to move in this direction here, which I believe it will, then this slope here will diminish the wave activity much more so, I think, than
My question was just simply, once it fills up with water, what effect does that have on the effectiveness of the coastal bank that's there now, the inner coastal bank?
When you,
It still has, you're saying that the coastal bank still has an effectiveness even once it fills up with the 3 feet of water?
when you're looking at a wave, 3/4 of an unbroken, these are gonna be breaking waves, but I'm thinking 3/4 of a wave, when you see it coming into the shore, is under the water. You don't see that. You only see about 1/3 of that wave. This is all gonna be breaking
Yeah.
wave.
Yeah.
So I see the presence of a slope diminishing the wave activity to some degree.
Sure. So if the homeowner were to leave that coastal bank inside underneath the house in the 10-foot depression, you would be comfortable with that, and we'd eliminate that amount of fill? We wouldn't need any fill in there. We'd still need fill ahead of the wall to improve the coastal bank at the top of the project, but we wouldn't need it underneath the house.
Well, I don't really see a great impact here,
Oh, yeah,
providing there's no significant stormwater coming off
Yeah.
the road.
Sure.
I would like to go out there during a heavy rain event and see if there is, it's only a 6-foot thing. What you're doing is you're replacing the function of the bank. I don't really see the necessity of it,
Mhm.
but I don't see an impact of it. I don't see a great impact of it
Gotcha.
either. I do see, as Paul mentioned, I do see that, and he keeps saying this, I'm questioning, is stormwater coming onto this property, because you've got a swale over here. Why is the swale there? Number one, and number
Why?
two,
Because,
this
no.
is oriented, either you can walk off this lawn and walk down here from this
Yeah.
property, or the stormwater will be oriented down here, which isn't a bad thing.
It's kind of the way it is right now. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not changing that drastically at all.
Exactly.
We're not touching any of the right-of-way elevation, right? That stays the same. And the new retaining wall that goes across the front will actually, I think, beneficial, right? Because it'll still be a similar slope. It'll be sloped down.
This retaining wall, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I don't see a significant impact to it.
I don't know.
With the presence of that. I don't know how far the wave swash is probably gonna come up and hit that wall, but it's not a V zone, so it's not gonna be that great. But you've seen pictures that were submitted by one of the abutters that, you'll have cobble over that wall during a significant, so
Yeah.
you'll overtop that wall easily.
I've been in there for 23, 24 years on and
Well,
off.
with the
so
house
I know.
elevated, you'll be in good
Well,
shape.
And my insurance might go down instead of keep going up. That would be the goal.
So that's really my only concern. Is the potential impact of the southern property. I think that's all. I did write a supplemental report. I didn't send it to them until this afternoon, because I didn't. So I sent it to them this afternoon. It says, the supplemental report says exactly what I just articulated.
So what you're recommending is leave the elevations of the land underneath the house the way they are.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the rest of the plan,
Let me just,
I think the only grading you have is in the front yard.
I'm not overlooking anything.
Just
With
in the front
the
yard.
grading over here, you said it already, though, with the
Yeah, it's the-
grading over here, when you do get coastal storm flowage, it's basically gonna funnel up here, which is.
But if we don't
which is
have fill
doing
under the
anyway.
house, if we're gonna keep that, all that grading would stay the same
Right.
in the easement opposite the house. So the only grade change would be up front.
Yeah, so if you look, well,
Yeah, right there,
Yeah.
that would go away.
exactly, yeah, that would go away, the fill under there would go away, and basically you'd have the same, similar situation. One of my concerns with this is that, this isn't a result of the project, but if you look at this, this attached breakwater here, it's in a deteriorated condition right here.
Yes, it is.
So with the continued, I'm saying this for your own protection actually, but if you look at that needs to be shored up. The rainwater coming down here, or coastal storm flowage coming up here and then relaxing back there is only going to exacerbate that situation. I would pay, well, it's a town, I think it's a town or federal project, but I would address that project.
So what grade would you recommend when we remove the old house to where it is now? See the purple outline that you have?
Yeah.
So obviously there's a foundation there, and we're gonna fill that hole in. Would
Yeah.
you recommend increasing that grade a little bit to increase that coastal dune that would,
Bank.
coastal bank that would slow the water down going onto the neighbor's property, or just fill it in flat?
I think that's up to you. I mean,
Okay.
if it's the same elevation here, same elevation up here, I
We'll
can't
leave
say,
it-
I
we'll
can't
leave it
say
as
that,
it
I
is.
can't say to raise it any higher.
Okay.
It would
It's
certainly,
elevation
it would
13
certainly,
on the house.
when you go up on piles, this has been protecting this house for many, many years. So it's just a natural thing that we all run into when people are elevating their houses, you're gonna get water flowing under it. We deal with the landward people a lot, saying.
They're elevated next door, just FYI, they're on that side of the
I thought I
house.
saw concrete on the foundation.
At the front, yeah, to where the lowest spot is, under their deck.
If you built it any higher, it would certainly help protect that property, but I don't think there's any, I can't think of.
13 and 14 lines
requires it.
into their house.
Gotcha. Okay, I just, I would ask now, instead of finding out later.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Members, anybody, Penny?
No, my big question was the fill, and I feel comfortable now. I hope the homeowner does.
I still want to, as Andy said, we just got this a few days ago. I'm not ready to say, oh, everything else is great, but I'm greatly encouraged that it looks like at least that part of the whole thing can be solved.
Paul?
One of you a minute ago, I think, was asking about where the foundation is. Just a quick look here, it looks like all the contour lines running into that foundation are pretty much 13 to 14 feet, so,
It is,
yeah.
That's what we keep us.
it is.
Lisa?
I think the explanation for the fill was very helpful. And it makes me feel more comfortable knowing that.
I really appreciate the explanation. It was incredibly helpful to understand the site more.
That's why we got him.
You paid the big bucks, Jim.
Amy?
Also encouraged, sounds like we've made some good progress. I guess I would like to know what the final amount of fill is gonna be once the revised plan comes in. And then also whether we should follow through with evaluating impacts of flow with the engineering analysis that we had already agreed on. So that was gonna be the second step after the peer review for the resource area. It sounds like that should be a pretty simple review if the fill has decreased greatly, so,
Because that hasn't been looked at yet.
not yet, no.
Which, Frank, can you explain that further? If there's no fill under the house, and the only fill is in the front yard, then what's there to look at as far as fill? I mean, the fill in the driveway is gonna be gravel, it's pervious, and the fill in front of the house would be loam.
Well, once we finish up this hearing this evening, you're gonna have some feedback to work with. So I'm assuming that you're gonna revise the plan, right? Just make the final changes.
Right now, the only change I see is taking off the proposed elevations under the house and the contours, just take those off.
Okay.
That's a
And
simple change.
then we're gonna have, then you're still filling the front of the house beyond
Yeah.
this proposed.
No, what I did was to bring the wall over,
Yeah.
hooked it here for the planter bed,
Yeah.
so it's this area in here that'd be filled, plus the driveway.
Right.
This is gravel and this is loam. That'd be the only fill on the lot.
So then that fill is gonna divert some water, as Jim pointed out, how it flows over the road. He's not commenting on how much water comes off the road.
I said earlier, we don't get water from the road, the survey
You
showed
said that.
I mean, the elevation showed that in our survey. If you need that demonstrated, you can put that on the final plan.
Well, let's see where we're at with that,
I mean,
Paul.
the other thing too, Frank, so you know, I'm sure you know, the town can't put water on someone's land anyway, and the town has a series of catch basins on the street. If the catch basins weren't there, it'd be flowing onto everyone's property.
Right. I get that, but we are still altering the site. You are still altering.
But we're
the site.
altering it to bring it into compliance with FEMA, unfortunately.
I understand. I think would be good to, when you revise the plan, we can see how much area is actually being filled, how much is being disturbed, and then we can make that evaluation. You're still changing it.
Huh?
You're still altering part of that site.
We are.
And
But what you're saying is, in the final analysis, you want this area from here down to stay exactly the same way it is now, and we're saying.
Jim's opinion tonight was that that would be the better way to leave it, and certainly it creates less obstacles for you if you leave it alone.
Yeah,
But you're still creating a new wall, a new top of coastal bank,
that's right,
and you're gonna fill from that coastal bank up to the street.
right. Which I think he said was not problematic.
Jim is looking at it from the standpoint of the coastal bank.
Right.
The other aspect of this would be the flooding or drainage on the site.
From the ocean?
From either the road, from,
If it was to go over today, it would go over what they're calling a coastal bank, which is our front lawn,
Mhm.
down into the existing driveway.
Yeah.
And then it would be running into our garage, which, that doesn't happen today. So, I mean, I can, again, I've been there for a long time. It doesn't go into that route, so.
Sure. Okay.
Maybe I've missed storms and
All right,
maybe
well,
missed
listen,
some
we
of your
can,
plan.
we can talk about that. I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure that we cover the bases, both for your property and for the abutting.
As do I.
Okay. Jim?
I could just reframe, like, support what you're saying.
Sure.
My point is, I can't calculate the volume of water, but if there, and it's just the if, and I think you need, you know,
Sure.
a stormwater engineer to do it, but if water is coming down here, and you're putting the wall there, it is gonna shed, I mean, the way you did the contours, a lot of it's gonna end up going down here, but if
Sure.
there's a significant amount of water, without this wall here, the water's basically gonna perk down
Yep.
over the property, and you're not gonna have really any displacement.
Right.
If, so I think that someone engineer can tell you that, if it's happening, so I think that's the point. Now, is it overtopping? And if it is, it will dissipate due to the natural, the soils here.
Yeah.
It will not disperse it. If it's not coming over, then, if there's no water coming over, then it's not an issue.
Right.
And I do have a question. Where's the garage?
What's that?
Where's the garage?
You didn't highlight it.
The
on your
detached
plan.
one or the, or?
I don't see a word anywhere. that
Oh.
says-
No.
I read it I read it down here. It says, there's a garage
You didn't,
somewhere.
yeah, you didn't color it,
Here's your
there it
park-
is.
Here's your parking area.
No, no.
Oh, yeah. So you're saying the newer?
No, it was a
Oh, the
proposal.
proposals.
It's a proposal.
Yeah, right
Yeah,
there.
right there.
Inside the house here. They're gonna drive into the house this way.
It's a little deceiving, Jim. It almost looks like the garage is where the parking is, but
Yeah,
it's
this is the
beyond.
driveway, they drive, the cars are gonna park here and here.
You have a 20-foot wall, you have a wall here.
That's
Top
elevation
elevation
20.
20.
Because the first floor of the house is 21.
Yeah.
So what they're gonna do is to drive into 20. The floor of the garage is 20, and they'll step up a foot to the first floor of the house. The top of the piles is 15.
garage, I assume.
You guys, got 12-foot frame, a 12-inch frame on top of the piles.
Am I not understanding it? The top of the ring wall is 20 feet.
No.
The top of the wall is at 20.
Right.
Concrete wall.
And so is the floor of the garage.
Yeah, and the floor of the garage is 20.
Okay.
Because the garage floor has to be lower than the first floor.
Yeah, so
So it's
you pretty much want to keep that.
But it's not really outlined on the plan.
No, that's why I was wondering, where's the garage? There's no
Oh, because
word
it's
that-
part of the house, there's
Yeah.
a,
Yeah.
There's no word that says garage. Well, anyway, okay, I get it.
It's imaginary garage.
Anybody in the audience, questions? Yes, sir.
I'm back with my photos. Do you mind if I just?
And your name and address,
Yes,
please.
Paul Bowers, live on the Third Cliff. I got some photos.
What's your address, Paul?
7 Lincoln Ave.
Thank you.
So I think it's interesting, during Mr. Marabito's presentation, he didn't say anything about the water going towards the house, so I got some pictures of what the water looks like coming towards the house here. But the first thing I wanted to remind everyone about is there's a easement right away that goes right through the middle of this property that's been moved over here. So it's the obligation of this person that's building this to keep in mind that this is the only access to the entire beach at the point at high tide. So, first page here, I've showed you what he proposes to do. His original proposal. I thank the Conservation Commission for altering this proposal. the 25-foot easement that he's giving us. I said, well, why don't I just put some plants
Those plants aren't,
right down the middle?
those plants aren't.
Excuse me, can I?
Okay, sure.
Is it okay for him to interrupt?
I just asked him to stop, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
that's fine.
He-
Okay,
he's
people
going
We're
can,
good.
fine, go ahead, sir.
This is the proposal that first came before the board. I think it just shows you, everyone here, how useful a Conservation Commission is in controlling what I consider kind of an arrogant misuse of the coastal property here. This easement never should have been moved in the first place. The best easement is right through the middle of this property. This project, which I consider a monstrosity, it's the second house on the island that's going up, and the cliff, and I think everybody in the neighborhood would agree it's really inappropriate for the neighborhood. And anything you guys can do to help us mitigate having something like this put up would be appreciated. So just by appearing here, apparently we're able to get this consultant hired and have people realize that this is an important coastal resource. You can't plant trees and confine people to walking 10 feet inside this easement. The purpose, I think, and one of the reasons Mr. Fitzpatrick wasn't aware of what's going on in this lot, we never see him down there in the winter. You don't see these kind of storms during the summer when he's living at this house. To me, the most important thing living on the coast there is to preserve the beach. And as the consultant said, the erosion, the deterioration of that seawall is a serious matter the town's going to have to address. And with the way that he set that easement up, the relocation, it'd no longer be able to run the heavy equipment necessary to get onto that seawall to replace the riprap that's there. That's one thing. And then just to support some of the things that the consultant noted, you can see how much water just in a regular storm comes into that lot. You can see the water in the first page of the storm of '92, which wasn't exactly as violent as the '78 storm or some of the other storms that have appeared there. You can see in the picture there on the first page the water completely overtopping the wall. And you can see that the debris extends all the way up through the right-of-way. So if they're allowed to channel this even more, they've already, Mr. Marabito said this is an existing wall. Well, I wish we'd realized they were going to put it there. It's a proposed wall, actually. If he'd been allowed to put a wall over here, and to increase the height of this, all this flow, as you can see on page 2 of my attachment, is going to get channeled right up through this right-of-way. It's going to erode it, and I'm thinking, what's going to happen 20, 30 years from now with global warming? We're going to be looking at that seawall collapsing, and guess what? At high tide, just like at the other end of the cliff, no one's going to be able to get to the beach. The next picture shows what happens on the road when the rocks overtop the seawall. The waves, even in
I have an
years
extra
ago.
copy you can share with Amy and Jim.
Oh, sure. Let me take that one. The rocks go right across the road, and I don't think the consultant realizes that's the type of storm you see down there. I've lived down there for 60 years, and I think this picture here says it all. This is back in '91. The wall had already started to settle. Here's this wall that they proposed to use as a retaining wall against fill. That wall's been getting battered by these waves for all these years. I think the thing, he's going to fill in behind that wall. It's probably going to collapse in the next big storm, in my opinion. We just kind of watch what goes on down there. And just historic pictures, since I've lived there for quite a while. That's what the garage looked like during one storm, completely surrounded with rocks and filled in there. It's not, the storm's out mild. It wasn't unusual to see this picture, one of the oldest pictures, the complete yard, even after they raised the house, completely under a couple feet of water. And this is what the house looked like before it was filled during a typical storm. The water just came and turned that whole lot into a lake. So anything you guys can do to prevent, next picture is just a wave overtopping, and a picture from the house next door showing the extent of the flooding in a real storm. Basically, the water is even with the seawall and flooding right underneath. And he was incorrect when he said that this house is already raised. That house is on a concrete foundation, it's not on piling. So once you tear down that house, all these waves are going to go right up against this house's foundation. And anything you can do to prevent that from happening is appreciated. And I'd like to thank you for the work you're doing and just encourage you to prevent any filling on this property and help me make sure that this easement doesn't stay where it is. It goes back to its original location. That's where I'm going to try to do if there's a building permit granted for this project.
Well, the part about the, and I'm sorry, your name again, sir?
Paul Bowers.
So, Mr. Bowers, the piece with the easement, it seems like that's not a...
Not your issue.
It isn't.
Yeah.
And, you know, the applicant has acknowledged that people have the access to that point right from the get-go, so...
But what happens when you get to the end of the easement now, if that seawall collapses down there?
Well, I think if the seawall collapses, there's probably some other issues going on as well. So, but there's an easement here that the town could, in fact, use to access that. If it winds up moving people's shrubs or whatever, that's their peril when they build on
Sure.
it. So that's up to them. The town, if there's an easement there that is usable by the town, they'll use it the way that they have to.
Sure.
So I don't see that as a problem. In terms of houses being elevated, the town of Scituate has been working for a very long time to deal with the issues of sea level rise. And one of the things that we're encouraging people to do is to elevate their homes. And we know that that creates other problems along the way.
But should you be able to
So
elevate it?
excuse me.
Should you be able to?
No.
Okay, all right.
Let's.
All right.
You
Continue
questioned
the lecture. Go
You
ahead.
questioned
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
interrupting. I think
All
you
right.
just did that. So
Just a point of
so-
order.
So thanks.
Yeah.
In order to build a home in these areas, they need to comply with the regulations that are put forward now, which means that people have to elevate their homes. And in turn, other homes will probably be elevated as well. Between the cost of insurance, if folks go to improve their homes, they're looking to get houses out of harm's way and not take the property from them. So we've been encouraging that. We're working with FEMA. Part of the CRS program encourages elevating of homes and getting them out of harm's way. It's difficult, and it creates other problems when these homes are moved. But the ultimate goal is to get these houses out of harm's way and not take them from people.
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
This was an empty lot. Someone came and said, I want to build a house.
That would be a
house
completely
there.
different
Yeah.
piece.
So why should he be allowed to go beyond his footprint and just build the biggest house you could possibly put on that lot with
We're going to
pilings?
deal and try to make the house compliant with the
good.
regulations.
That's my only point.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Anybody else in the audience? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Frank Nelson. I am at 8 Lincoln across the street. And so the question I have in regards to the 25-foot easement that Paul was just speaking to, the landscape plan, I think, was actually asked by you, and we appreciated that.
Mhm.
But, you know, I'm not, but my own feeling in knowing how things grow is that as presented, it's presented as a 10-foot access with plantings.
Sure.
So all of a sudden, the 25 feet after 1 year of growing turns into 10 feet. And if you, I happened to look at the 1996 thing when this was granted, this easement, and it was basically vehicles are supposed to be able to access it, drop off people that are going to the beach. And if we have shrubs at 10 feet, all of a sudden, this becomes like a lawn and a 10-foot path. And judging by other paths down your slip, it turns into a 3-foot path. So all of a sudden, 25 feet gets really small really quick, when I think the point of it should be 25 feet, and it should be easily accessible, especially by older people and people that bring everything down there. It shouldn't be diminished in any way,
Okay.
is my own thought.
I get it.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
This is an old plan. Again, we went through a lot of iterations. This is the third time we're here. Those plants will not be in there, and I apologize to the neighborhood if they thought that those plants were going to be in there. The flower beds, based on what Mr. Maravito put together, is what we're looking at.
Okay. Well, it'd be good, we do need to get a planting plan.
We'll get it revised. We have to
That's
do.
for erosion as well. I mean, we like to see a nice yard, but our concern is really controlling erosion and water. We know that water's gonna run down that area as well, so what gets planted in there, our concern isn't really how they look, it's that we control the erosion and that the easement remain there. And you have an understanding that if work has to be
It's a
done in there-
25-foot easement, and I want to not put anything on that 25 feet,
Okay.
right? So we could bring, and including plants. So again, this is not the current
Sure.
plan, and we will,
Okay.
when we do the new elevations, we'll show that.
That'd be helpful, thank you.
I want to make sure I'm
Sure.
understanding. So what you're saying is that these 2 rows of trees are gone?
Are gone.
It's wide open?
That's an old plan.
Okay,
That's
all
an old
right.
plan.
I just want to make sure I understand.
But the reason that we do have these hearings and the public input, as well as the engineers and the consultants, is to try to get to the best area that we can. And best isn't always what everybody likes, but we're gonna try to get to a point where it's compliant, where it doesn't have the impacts, negative impacts, and that we get to the root of some of these issues. And so that's where we're at. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know.
Your name is, please?
Linda Dirksen. I'm at 3 Michael Ave.
Sure.
I had a question regarding stormwater, and I'm not even sure that that's a Concom.
It is in this case.
Okay. I just don't feel that the stormwater issue has been addressed. Is that not being taken into account at this particular time? Is that what?
So what we did first is we wanted to make sure that we had the correct resource areas. So that's what's been discussed here tonight, is the coastal bank and the different areas around that. With that, there's been discussion about the revisions to this plan, and then we did briefly discuss whether or not stormwater would need to be addressed. And my feeling is that we still have to look at stormwater piece. It's gonna be probably less significant without the fill, but there's still an area that's being filled, and how does that water get rerouted or whatever, so,
All right, thank you.
okay? Anybody else? Well, I think we're gonna have to continue this to get that plan. I know that seems torturous, but,
How far out? Well, we have January 8th is real busy, or the 22nd,
When's your next meeting?
the 8th.
January 8th.
This is January 8th. I don't have much to do to revise that plan.
Okay, so you want to come in on January 8th? Okay. What-
Yeah, this,
The next peer review, I think it might be best to go to the 22nd.
yeah.
So we're moving forward with Merrill? That was a question I had.
Yeah, just
We are.
storm.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll revise the plan and get it to you right away.
ASAP,
And then it's gonna
then
go
we
to
can
Merrill.
get it to review, all right? And Jim will take another look at it with the revisions that are there, and
And Merrill's gonna look at, what, the grading and the fill?
Yep,
Yeah.
and impacts the flow.
All right.
all right?
So the 22nd?
22nd.
Okay, you will be first on at 6:15.
Yeah, good choice. The 8th is gonna be.
Yeah. I make a motion, we continue 43 Collier to January 22nd at 6:15.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. It's amazing when you look at some of those storm pictures, it's like, holy mackerel. Yeah.
Water's still gonna come.
Frank, I'm excusing myself from going.
You gotta say, yeah, so that's the one we said we were never gonna do. That's the one we didn't want to ever do.
2-minute break. 2-minute break.
Yes.
Okay. let's go.
sleep tonight.
Someone else will hang on or something. No, no. Yeah, be part of the.
Let me just stay under this, I think.
Oh, no. Yes. And it's gonna be like that all
Amy, I got that.
Are you down? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to wait, Paul, till the next meeting?
Yeah, right now, are you leaving or what?
Well, we could adjourn unless you're ready to go.
I think people are.
I promised Richard we'd make it short and sweet. Short and sweet. I'm wearing my hat because the
Sure,
light hurts my eyes.
sure.
Can't come again.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Carol. Wait a minute, before I do that, oh yeah, this is the next one. We gotta open up the other ones, but they're after this. On December 11th, 2017, at 6:40 PM, the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Situate Code of Bylaws, regarding the application of Joseph Scanzillo, trustee, Jacob Hatch Condominium Trust, to install additional parking on property located at 10 Driftway, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening.
So you want to
In
introduce
case you don't know
yourselves?
him, this is Paul Murabito from Ross Engineering.
No.
I'm Joe Scanzillo, Scituate resident and one of the owners of the Jacob Hatch property.
I'm Russ Anderson, trustee of the Jacob Hatch Condominium Association.
Thank you.
And we do have a peanut gallery behind us that have
Sure
financial...
they appreciate being referred to as.
Well, rather than go by name individually, they are interested parties in the Jacob Hatch property.
Thank you.
Actually, I think we have here representatives of all but 2 of the units.
Oh, great.
I was going to write a Merry Christmas on them, but I can't. There's a second letter.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I don't want to repeat you.
Yeah, you have to give me this stuff too, so I know.
Give me one, we'll keep it.
So for full disclosure, some of these folks could be my doctor or they were my kids' doctors, but I think I can deal with this.
Thank you. The purpose of this application is to seek an order of conditions to add another row of additional parking for the Jacob Hatch building, which is located number 10 Driftway. These wetland lines that you see, there's 2 wetlands. One is an isolated vegetated wetland, which is in orange, with a 50 and 100-foot buffer zone. And further to the south is a bordering vegetated wetland with the associated 50-foot buffer and the 100-foot buffer zone. These wetland lines were taken from a previous plan that was prepared for the property. Brad Holmes did go out and look at it and determine that the lines had moved. If you recall, when we came in for the RDA earlier this year, we used the same wetland line that you see on this plan here. What the proposal is to add an additional row of parking. There's a serious need for more parking for the existing building, and the plan would be to remove the existing guardrail and the wall, which is relatively short in height in this area here, and we'd go out an additional roughly 18 feet, 18 to 20 feet. This plan would have a reinforced concrete wall, a U-shaped wall that would contain the fill, and also hold the a new parking area. There'd be some type of a small guardrail on top of it. If you recall, this wall here was a Versalock wall with a guardrail, and the vehicles were pushing it out. This wall is in more serious condition. By picking the wall up above the back edge of the pavement, that would act as a buffer or a deterrent to cars that want to go too far toward the wall. We show a proposed silt sock about 3 to 4 feet off the edge of the wall. The plan would be to remove the existing wall that's in a state of disrepair. And they would excavate the trench for the new wall, pour the wall, then all the work after that would be on the inside piece of it. Normally under a notice of intent, as far as stormwater goes, you don't have to do it for a single-family home, but where this is a commercial business, we do have to meet the BMPs, and we do address that in the project narrative. We also show a cross-section of what the material would look like under the pervious pavement, which is the green area in this location. Essentially, the water would go through the pervious pavement and settle out through the various layers of various size stone. And there are 2 existing catch basins now. There's one in this corner and one here that go into a drain manhole, which would remain in place, but the runoff from this pavement would be absorbed by the pervious pavement, gravel fill below it. This is Route 3A in this area here. This is as far as we can push the pavement, and I'm sorry, the parking. There's a district line here that doesn't allow any parking between here and 50 feet of the highway. And you can see the parking spaces going right through the line, but from here over, we have the additional spaces. The elevation of the land here is going to stay the same. We don't need to put any fill in here because the wall's going to be containing the proposed spaces. It's fairly straightforward as far as the construction. So with that, I'll end and answer any questions you may have.
Richard? You said it was pervious, Paul? The new...
The pavement, yeah, it's what we call, it's a pervious pavement. It's 4 inches thick. There's a layer of 4 inches of 3/4 inch washed stone. And then there's some coarse pink run gravel, and it goes into pea stone, and it goes into some double wash stone. Then from there, the rest of the water would filter down into the gravel fill below that.
And am I reading the lines right, that it does extend into the 50 there?
Yeah,
a little bit?
This is the isolated wetland.
Right.
This is the 50-foot buffer for the isolated wetland.
Yeah.
We do have numbers for the amount of work that's in this area here. It's a relatively small. This is a 100-foot buffer
Right.
for the isolated wetland.
Right.
Then the 50-foot buffer for the bordering vegetated wetland, we aren't doing any work in that 50-foot buffer. But between 50 and 100 feet, we're doing this work in here. If you follow this line here, this is the work we're doing inside the 50-foot buffer. The 100-foot buffer zone for the bordering vegetated wetland intersects the 50-foot buffer for the isolated wetlands. So if you try to follow these lines, you'll go crazy. That's why I use different colors.
And you said you were putting in a new wall at the end?
Yes, what we're going to do is to put a wall in here.
Right.
These
And what's
walls
that
are
made of?
failing.
What's that being made of?
Reinforced concrete.
Okay.
Probably a 12 to 14 inch thick wall.
And what kind of access do you have to construct that wall?
What they'll do is they'll go in here and excavate a trench to put the footing in. They'll pour the footing, they'll pour the wall, they'll backfill on this side the trench, and on this side here, they'll import the gravel fill in this material and then pave it, and that's it. Then on top of the wall, they'll install the fence or the guardrail. It's pretty straightforward.
Go ahead.
Once they pour the wall in here, then they'd be all done working on this side of the wall, on the wetland side.
Paul? No questions. Lisa?
I'm just trying to figure out how much
disturbance there is in the 50 doing this?
Pardon?
How much disturbance will be going on in the 50 while you're doing this?
Almost nothing, very little.
For the BVW, it's out of the 50 pretty much, except that corner.
Right.
Within 50 feet of the isolated wetland, there'd be, there's 946 square feet of new parking area, and between the wall and the silt sock is about 317 square feet. So there's a total of 1,763 square feet. 946 feet would be permanent, which is the green area. That's between the orange line and the green. As far as a buffer zone of the bordering vegetated wetland, there's no work within the 50 feet of the bordering vegetated wetland. But between the 100-foot buffer zone line of the bordering vegetated wetland in this area here, there's 2,000 square feet. So it's this area here and this area here.
But do you know the figure? I think what Lisa was asking is, what's the square footage in the 50-foot buffer of the isolated wetland?
9 something.
Of the isolated wetlands?
Yeah.
There's 946
Okay.
square feet.
46.
But the quantity, excuse me, but the quantity, I think what Lisa was asking is the quantity of square footage that will be disturbed, not necessarily the gross quantity of 900, right?
Well, then he was adding 300 to it, so it was like 1,200.
317, yeah. You know, it's not just
From
the
silt
area.
sock to the wall,
Right.
it's 317 square feet,
Okay. So it's
And it-
more like 300 square feet.
which would be temporary in nature.
Now, what is in that area now? What is growing in that area now?
Some thick vegetation. This is the isolated wetland, and there's some pucker brush in here.
Pucker brush.
What is
Well,
pucker
I
brush?
call it's a thick undergrowth.
I've heard of picker brush.
Nothing's in here. This is the wetland, the vegetation. You can see it over here as well. When they put this space in here, everything's coming back in over time.
A lot of what's there now, we actually planted on the, just about the 50-foot buffer zone, according to the original order of conditions that we had when we built the building originally. So we have some of that still has survived, but most of it's been overtaken by the thorny pucker brush undergrowth that's kind of nasty stuff. And there's a lot of poison ivy in there, too.
Jen? Amy?
Well, so, this is a nice introduction to this project. I did have a couple of things that came up when I reviewed the site plan. And I guess I would start with the resource area delineation and having it be current, I think is important in order for you to be able to evaluate the area of alteration and what's going on here. I know that Paul said that there was a request for determination recently that you accepted these same lines. The information that we
Yeah,
require for notices are a little
Was that a repair? I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt.
was a
Amy, but it
repair.
was
That was a
Yeah.
repair, Frank.
So-
And Brad Holmes was out there like a year ago. He inspected the property, including this area in the NOI, in the other area.
Right.
And he determined that the wetlands delineation had not changed. And we can get a letter from him to that
Yeah,
effect
great.
if
So,
you
so why don't we get a letter from Brad and have the flags tied up so we can walk the line? And just of note, the isolated vegetated wetland and the BVW wetlands, they're both regulated the same. So when you talk about encroachment into the 50, it's going to be evaluated in the same manner.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to know is if other areas of the property have been evaluated for putting the property outside of the buffer altogether. It looks to me like maybe in the northwest of the building might be a good opportunity to increase parking over there, rather than filling and altering the resource area.
Can you
Which is-
point that
which
out
is-
on the plan?
That's where
So what's the Rotary?
it's where the pond
There's a
is.
Yeah, I
detention
just
pond
didn't
there.
know if you had looked at that as a possibility
Yeah,
rather
yeah.
than,
There's a stormwater basin up here.
okay,
Yeah.
it's not shown on the plan, though.
No, we didn't
Is there
show
any
that.
other opportunity on the site rather than to go into the
No.
resource area?
Part of the charge that we gave Brad was to find a place where we could park, and this was the ultimate conclusion.
Okay, those things weren't presented in the notice, so maybe if you could walk us through your thought process on why this area was chosen. And maybe there is another area on the property that would result in less alteration of the resource, would be good to look at. Options, for sure. Let's see, other things that came up on my review. In addition to the resource delineation, the flag's missing. Let's see, details of the quantities and types of fill that you're proposing. Reviewing stormwater impacts. It does trigger the state act for the stormwater standards. So I'm gonna recommend that once this is, you've decided that this is definitely what you wanna do, and once we know that the planning board's gonna approve these additional spaces, do you have a letter from them saying that they're good with this?
No, and I'm not sure we need it, but we can.
Okay, so
Talk
we
to
can
that
take
another
that
day.
up and just make sure that this is something that all the different boards and committees embrace, that likely that will also result in an opinion by the peer reviewer for stormwater. Yeah, so I think that's a summary of what I have.
And I see that you had sent an email to Paul,
Yes.
so he has those requests as well.
Frank, can I add that?
Sure.
We had walked the site with Brad Holmes and with the conservation people about a year ago, after Brad had flagged the area. So this is just, you're coming in after we have begun the process about a year or so ago. And Pat and Brad and I met at the site, walked around, and the general conclusion was, yeah, this is the only place you could do it.
Sure. Well, okay. Is there anybody in the audience? Yes, sir.
My name is Elio Rocco. I'm an owner and represent two of the units, 203 and 204.
Sure.
And basically, out of frustration, clients that come to the site, it's task specific. They're in and out, and parking has always been a problem. Short of the risk of going across the street and running across the driftway to get over here to park,
Sure.
which is an empty building, but eventually it won't be. It's saturated.
Right.
I respectfully ask you, give it strong consideration.
Okay, and I'm sure you wouldn't be spending this money if you didn't need more parking,
Well,
so.
one of the units is empty right now, so I mean, it's.
No,
Trying to get tenants is, part of it is parking.
I've been there and I appreciate the problem. So we appreciate that. The flip side is that the building, when it was built with a series of conditions. At the time that the applicant came in, they said, okay, we know where all the wetlands lines are, and we're gonna try to design this building to stay out of these resource areas or the buffer zone. So we approved a building that is out of those areas, and then the building gets built, and then we realize that, it's successful, and there's lots of folks there, and they need more space. But as a commission, trying to do our part, we're still trying to protect these wetlands areas. And the difference between what we're discussing now and what we discussed a year and a half ago is that basically what came in before was for a repair. There was a piece of the wall that had failed. We try to accommodate that with somewhat less of a hearing, so we call that an RDA, where it's a matter of nothing's being expanded, nothing's getting any closer. We look at that sort of thing and say, how do we keep that fairly simple so that you can go ahead and make those repairs? In this case, there's now an expansion of the parking area, and it's encroaching into some of the buffer zones. So that, to this commission's eye, is a little bit more critical in terms of protecting some of that. And I realize that a lot of what's out there is just undergrowth and there's probably a lot of invasives and all that sort of thing. But there's still this process that we need to go through. And you folks are very familiar with the building. I'm a little bit familiar with the building and the area. Amy's questions, I think, are very valid. You know, is there another alternative spot? If you're not familiar with the whole site and you just look at this plan, you'd immediately look to that corner towards the Rotary and say, geez, why aren't they putting it over there, not being familiar with the site? So that's a pretty valid question. I'm sure, you know, you can explain that one. Then, you know, getting into this disturbed area, we want to make sure that we've done our part to protect those wetlands or the buffer zones that are there. And so there's just a few series of things that need to be clarified so that we can figure out the best way to go forward. And it's hopefully not an adversarial sort of thing. We just want to make sure we do our part, you do your part, and then we come to a conclusion as to where we get to. And it's not Joe's first dance. I mean, he knows the process.
I do. And it's never an adversarial thing. It's always just got to take care of the business that you have in front of you.
Right.
One thing I would like to express is I know you guys have to do your job and you have to weigh things carefully. In this particular case, we have a safety issue, and it's a genuine safety issue that concerns not only me, but I'm sure other people in the building. We have mothers carrying babies and dragging toddlers across the driftway and dodging traffic. We obviously need parking, but I do not want to be responsible for, we're going to do everything that we can to try to get these people to park on our side of the road where they belong, as opposed to going across the driftway and trying to cross the driftway with the safety hazard. And that's happened a number of times.
Sure. No, I've seen traffic and I've seen people on the other side and people running across. So I realize the issues.
Doing a 20-yard dash.
Yep, and it's critical. So, but let's make sure we dot our i's, cross the t's.
Would it help if we quantify looks like maybe about a half dozen parking spaces that are within the 50-foot buffer zone and get a better handle on the quantity of square footage that we're inside the 50-foot buffer?
I think to Amy's point, first off, getting a letter from Brad, we want to make sure that the wetlands lines are valid and still good, and so I think it's something from Brad.
Something, a narrative from Brad describing the resource area and the impacts of the interests of the act in the Scituate bylaw. So that should be in the notice of intent. And then we want to have flags, so ribbon tied out there, and then
Do we need them everywhere, Amy, or just in the areas where they're impacting them? I mean, do we really need to flag the whole site? But
no, not the whole site. No,
adjacent to the project,
just flag the southern part of the site, where Paul's highlighting there.
Okay.
And then have those, put on the plan.
Would you like to come out to the site and we can do the same walk that we did with Pat?
Sure.
Just to show you
Yeah,
where the
I
other
have
stuff.
been out there, and I did observe that there's a pretty good topographical jump down from the parking lot down to the low area. So I get it.
I think Paul
Started out, it didn't appear, but so I think it's back through that brush you described.
It'd be good, Paul, if you could fairly simply just show the detention area and the other thing, why that other area is not going to be suitable for parking.
I have the original site plan, it was done by Taylor. This is the edge of the paving.
Right.
I can show the basin. This pipe here is going through the basin right here, so.
Okay. But it's pretty easy to put that forward.
Well, and I think that when you ask the planning board their opinion on whether this triggers a modification, that there's, based on the number of parking spaces you're proposing to add, that their opinion will be that it does trigger some kind of a modification, or at least a review by them. But I would definitely recommend contacting the planning office for a consult before we probably go too far down the path with conservation. you might want to run them simultaneously, just to make sure that, you know, they're on board with this increase in parking at this property. And where, I think that they also weigh in on, you know, safety and things that we don't weigh in on.
I think when you're talking to Brad, Paul, or Joe, too, the other thing is you are gonna disturb an area that's below that. We know that you vegetated some areas, and we know the growth that's there, but it would probably be a good idea to just have some sort of notation as to how that's gonna be dealt with on the outside of the retaining wall. You know, if it's grassed or whatever. I'm not, I mean, a lot of significant plantings are gonna be ineffective. But we still want to make sure that either erosion or whatever is dealt with. So, again, I'm not thinking that there's going to be any big enhancement there. But you are going into the buffer, so if you can think about some way of maybe some additional plantings or some simple enhancement somewhere on the property. You know, we do look for mitigation when we go into an area, and whether it's some, you know, some sort of bushes in another portion of that, or the detention area, something simple to offset the work in the buffer zone.
Right.
All right?
I remember in our original order of conditions, we had something like an obligation to plant 125, we
I
planted
know.
over 600.
I know, and they're gone. I mean, a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff disappears because of the way the thing grows. But think about something, and it doesn't have to be a super
Paul can
replanting.
figure out where to put some pucker bushes, maybe.
We don't want them.
We don't want,
You don't know where that term comes from, do you?
they keep coming back.
I don't want to know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to know.
You know why they
So
call
you
it
can send
that?
that to us at an email, Paul.
I'll send you some in a box for Christmas. Just label it seaweed, Italian seaweed.
All right, I think we got the gist of that. How long do we want to continue this? We already told you that the
8th is ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah, we have to get the information from Brad.
yeah.
That should take,
January 22nd?
shouldn't take a day or two.
Yeah.
January 22nd?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make any plan changes other than putting the stormwater basin on it from the as-built plan.
Okay.
Can we be second on the agenda if we're not first?
Right now, you lost first, but you can be second.
So I'll make a motion to,
Oh, yeah.
I'll make a motion to continue Jacob Hatch, condo, Scanzillo, 10 New Driftway, for January 22nd at 6:20.
Sounds good.
Need a second on that?
Second.
Did we want to set up something for a peer review of the stormwater?
Well, why don't we
Or
get
get
to,
the
let's get these other
resource.
pieces sorted out, and you
Okay.
can have a discussion with them about that.
Okay,
All
sounds
right.
good, yeah.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good evening.
Go home.
Town of Scituate, DPW, Bailey's Causeway, replace culvert. On December 11th, at 6:45, not. Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, the Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Town of Scituate DPW/Kevin Cafferty to repair a culvert on Bailey's Causeway, Scituate. Butters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
And we got to continue them, right?
I'm assuming you got the abutter notification? So, how long out do they want to continue that, Amy, did they say? Or what do you think?
They said they wanted to continue to January 8th, I believe.
That's what I had down, too. Do we want to do that?
What's on for the 8th?
Should we
Oh.
could put them on for the 22nd if you
Oh,
want.
let's see.
That does, but then we also have this right here.
Oh, yeah.
And
Is
we-
Toll Brothers going to be on the 8th?
I would say strongly yes.
And we have Sunset as well.
Definitely maybe.
Not actually,
No, I
won't
think
take
it's-
Right.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I think it's leading that way, yeah.
If you put them on for the 8th, they're going to continue for the
Why
22nd.
don't we just go to the 22nd?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to continue Town of Scituate DPW Bailey's Causeway to 6:25 on the 22nd of January.
Second.
All in favor? Lisa or Jen might want a second one of those, you know?
Okay, well, if you're concerned about that, you can assign them. You can
Lisa especially
You
has
can
a big
start
house.
assigning. Frank, who does the second?
Paul's just too fast.
It's usually Penny and Rich, so I don't even think about it, you know? I guess you're the next guy in line.
Sometimes I'm just
Was
quiet
that
for a second waiting.
6:45? Is that what you said?
I said 6:25, yes.
6:25.
Yes.
You know what's gonna happen? We're gonna make this big fuss out of January 8th, and we're all gonna wind up bottled up on the 22nd. That's right.
Right, because every Toll Brothers is gonna continue, a whole bunch of these will continue, and
On December 11, 2017, at 6:50 PM in the Town Hall, Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 4 of the Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Situate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of the Town of Situate DPW/Kevin Cafferty to repair a culvert on Gilson Road in Situate. Butters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
I make a motion to continue Town of Scituate DPW Gilson Road to 6:30 on January 22nd.
All in favor?
No, you're supposed to second.
You're right, Paul. You're right. That's why we don't do that.
second, yeah,
All in
second.
favor? Yeah, geez, thanks, Lisa. Nice, nice.
Jen, who says we don't have fun here?
I never said that. I never said that.
That's what I get for taking a
He gave you the
short
big friggin' chance.
I blew it.
There's another one, but you can do this.
One more.
Practice makes perfect.
There we go. See?
Um,
Jen stood up for me.
Toll Brothers, Hadley Road, Tilden Road, and they're requesting a continuance to the 8th.
So I make a motion to continue Toll Brothers, Hadley and Tilden, never mind that,
Yeah.
to 6:50 on January 8th.
First, second, third. Second.
All in favor? You're right.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of November 6th, 2017, and November 20th, 2017, as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Carol. Yep. Yep. All right, what is the conditions?
Order of conditions, Milton Street septic, here.
Do we,
Are we good?
You got them, right?
They look good to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
take a motion?
Motion to accept the order of conditions for 7 Milton Street. I think it's here, is the way you pronounce it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And I make a motion to accept the order of conditions for Coletti, 28A Cherry Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And one more, accept the order of conditions for Town of Scituate Harbor Master, 100 Cole Parkway.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Glad to see Lisa did it. But Jen, you're still up.
I know.
Certificates of compliance, rentals, how did you fare out there? That's on Elm.
Okay, so that's on
I
hold.
saw a lot of pictures.
Right. And we determined that there's a few things going on, so it's on hold. So
Okay.
recommendation to take no action.
Okay.
Until then? Oh.
Okay, so Tilden, this is the deal with Tilden. I'm not sure you want to take action, but I wanted you to be aware of what's going on so you can think about it and weigh in as appropriate. But anyway, so I think it was 2005, there was an order of conditions for a subdivision off of Tilden. And we'll say it's an 8-lot subdivision. And one of the lots had this special condition for conservation restriction on that lot to protect the 50-foot buffer to the resource area. So this certificate of compliance request is coming in from a developer who inherited the project from a developer who's no longer around. And that lot that I spoke of has been subsequently sold and built upon. And the conservation restriction, which identified when I was doing a review of the file, was never placed on the lot. So apparently that this was a condition that was common back at that time period. And I'm not sure whether or not the conditions have been enforced or followed through with by developers, by homeowners and the likes. But I mean, I think it puts us a little bit in a dilemma, because I'm not sure that the current developer or owner of the subdivision rights or whatever has the authority to put a CR on a lot that's been sold. And I think it could be a legal question. I think they were gonna go consult with their legal team, and we could do the same thing with town council.
Right.
About just how that would work, or whether the other side of it is, or an argument could be made that that 50-foot buffer is protected by virtue of our bylaw anyhow. Although, as you just saw by the last project, people asked to go into that 50-foot buffer often. So, you know, the environmental restriction would definitely protect the interests that I think the commission at the time was trying to protect. That's for sure.
Maybe, so we don't tie up a meeting with a lot of that discussion, maybe we could, I don't mind sitting down with the person that's trying to get this unwrangled. You and I could spend a little time on that, and then maybe get cut to the quick on a few things, and then look at it with the commission. And
right.
Whether it's gonna be a CR, whether it could be a deed restriction.
Right.
You know, might simplify
Parker
it.
comes to mind when we just talked about recently.
So maybe we can find a
Same thing.
middle of the ground sort of thing that we can satisfy what the former commission wanted to do, at the same time not create some huge problem.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, honestly, and I think that I should wrap it into a conversation with town council to see what their opinion is on it. I mean, I don't even know.
Well,
how
the thing is, the condition doesn't go away, like from our legal standpoint. You can change hands and sell and buy. We have no legal obligation to say, oh, well, we'll just make this order of conditions go away. And like Frank's saying, we're willing to say, okay, let's look at the intent and be flexible, but we don't need a legal opinion to say this is the order of conditions, this is filed, and you need to comply. That's how it works, and we're willing to work with them.
And the same token, if somebody comes through with a project in this 50-foot area, again, we'll be looking at the past history of the projects.
Right.
And seeing that you intended that it never be broken, but.
Okay, but so I have a question. So the seller of the lot knew about the conservation restriction.
Right.
And they sold it. Now, my question, did they disclose the conservation restriction? or
Let the
did
buyer beware. You hire an
did they
attorney,
withhold it?
an attorney does a title search. If you have a competent attorney, that's the whole reason you have these.
Well, the title search is only as good as if things have been logged. If they're not logged,
But it
it's
was
not
an
gonna
order of
come up.
It's an order of conditions. They're-
Oh, okay, so that would have been,
Right.
that would have.
So they don't go, that's not a defense, like,
I'm not saying it was
Yeah.
a defense, I was just saying.
Right.
You know.
Unfortunately, Lisa, what happens, and some folks are more diligent than others, oftentimes we'll see a house change hands 2 or 3 times and nobody picked up on an order.
Right.
And then somebody that has done this before, maybe more experienced or had an issue, they'll start, oh geez, there's an order of conditions, we better look at those. And then the thing pops up, oh geez, you weren't supposed to build this, or this never got finished, or whatever. So it does happen, and it happens a lot. And so this is a thing that's been brought to light, so we'll have to figure out how to.
Right, because this land was supposed to be in conservation restriction.
Right.
and that's why it's
Wanna protect
recorded
it.
on the deed, so that it can't go away.
Yeah.
You can't just say, oh yeah, we sold the house, this is all gone.
Yeah.
It's a But like Frank said, we're willing to work with them, so it's,
You know, and in this case, is, you know, to Amy's point, you know, if you put that on there and you make it as hard to comply with as possible, when someone comes back in and said, oh geez, now we want to make our parking lot bigger, or now we want a swimming pool, somebody made a deal a long time ago that said, this is where the line is, and you can't go any further. And you got your permission to build your building, or you got your permission to build your house, because you agreed to that line.
And I think within the 50, we should draw a harder line.
Yeah. And you can, but at the same token, if you have extenuating circumstances, you want to be able to look at it and say, all right, can we look at this in a reasonable way? And as long as we get protection or habitat or some other thing for that, that's why, like in the case of this parking area, I said, you know, mitigation. So let's just say they're really stuck, they need some more parking. All right, and we got to get to that. You know, they haven't, in my mind, they haven't proved enough of it just yet. So we want to get to that. But let's just say that they really need that. Is there something that they can do on that lot that would give some compensation for the area that they want to encroach? Maybe they can even make it better. I mean, what grows beyond that retaining wall is habitat. But maybe there's some other type of habitat that could be done that would actually work better. Because they did a lot of plantings for that project that are now totally overgrown with bittersweet and other plants that have just grown back in over time and smothered whatever they put in there, because that's
That's the way it works.
how it works.
and Frank just explained how the bylaw is written. It could have very easily been written to say, under no conditions ever will the 50-foot be disturbed. There is no mitigation ratio because it will never be touched. But it isn't written that way for those reasons.
And that's why we get to decide on how some of those things
Otherwise,
work.
we'd be out of the job.
But apparently the commission in 2005, though, was very adamant.
Right.
These developers who were coming in with these big houses on marginal lots, in the, you know, their plan set clearly showed no backyard, because you're going right down into the wetland.
And everybody agreed to that because they
Right.
wanted a building permit.
And then
Years later, they come back and say, oh geez, well.
But we've
we need
also
the
had
yard,
commissions
there's
that
tips,
were
there's
adamant
deer.
about enforcing things that were not regulations.
Right.
It becomes a
Yeah.
fad because Billy said this is how it should be, so this is how we do it, you know, and
But I know there are commission members that may not even be here right now that feel strongly about this,
Right.
you know, so.
Okay.
I don't know who that would be.
No, but you made, tonight, you made a good point. You look at alternatives, and you look at the whole picture, and then the decision isn't made, you know, and
What about this extension for, is it Tomlinson?
Tomlinson.
Tomlinson?
Central Ave dock.
Okay, yeah, so this was an order of conditions, and they did not build out the dock. So they're looking for an extension, because they want to do it.
Are they within the time
Central
period
Ave.
to give them one?
Yes.
Okay.
Although if we don't act now, they're gonna run out of their window. I think it expires in January, right, Carol? February.
Okay, just to let you
Today.
know,
Today.
the
Oh,
dock permit was not issued to the Tomlinsons. They just recently moved to 238.
Yep, so it's a new owner.
Yeah, it's a new owner.
So we
But
can,
that doesn't
we
really
can
matter.
extend the orders for up to 3 years? Did they give a time that they wanted to?
3 years.
3 years.
Okay.
So you need a motion to extend the order of conditions for 3 years from today?
Yes, from 3 years from the,
Expiration, yeah.
3 years from the expiration. I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Do you have anything else, Amy, for this evening?
no.
Okay, so I did, real quick, I'll do it real fast. I gotten some great feedback from folks on the trails in the West End. Our volunteers are out there keeping stuff clear, neat, organized, it's looking great. Everybody's moving forward with the new access stuff. Penny's got pushing for plans and whatnot, and she's moving forward. And then the folks with the mapping, they want to start to think about their bridge. So maybe a couple of us can go out and take a look. Jen, if you want to,
Yeah,
we'll
go
take
ahead.
a look where that bridge is going to be proposed and explain to them the process that they have to go through to get that on the map. And then they've got their RFP going forward, and it's looking good. You've had a chance to chat with Marla.
Yeah, Marla and I chatted a couple of weeks ago.
Probably.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
We met at the town library, and she kind of walked me through some of their plans. This was before it got approved, so it's great that it
Yeah.
has.
So-
We followed up actually over email because I did the Hubble Trail, which is one of the ones that they wanted to map out. And it looks like it's actually been extended beyond what the Boy Scouts originally did. So it keeps going a lot further than I originally remember.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure who's been working on
I'll
it.
have to take a look. Maybe someone else is.
Well, there's actually a tree that I think is in a very precarious position.
Oh,
I'm not
really?
sure. Yeah, I have a picture of it.
Okay.
I would be worried.
I'll take a look.
So
All right.
I don't want anybody to.
Well, actually, anything like that, the good news is with the folks that are doing the repair work, they're almost looking for stuff to do. If we send them that and say, geez, we got this concern for here,
Yeah.
they're on it.
Yeah.
So-
I can definitely shoot it over.
These guys are great. They're retired and they're out there. Kind of envious.
With chainsaws.
Yeah. And then the Driftway Park, I had an opportunity to get out there and walk around, and the things that are going to start to come forward is that observation area that was done when the park was sort of established is now probably a good 30 years old, and some of the decking and the rails and all that sort of stuff are going to start to be in need of repair. And if we're talking about it now, it'll probably be a couple of years before it gets done. But I think it's something that we really need to start to look at and decide how we're going to address that park, because it is part of our care and custody, and it's time to think about some things. We have somewhere a plan for that whole Driftway Park. We had hired Horsley Witten, a consultant, probably 5 or 6 years ago now, Carol? But this plan with all kinds of ideas for amphitheater, signage, more stuff. And I'm not talking about maybe going through with all of that. But what we should do is look at what we want to do with the Driftway Park, and then maybe start to think about a community preservation proposal to fund that, so that we can get the work done on some of these observation areas, and at the same time, maybe, it's a really well-used area.
It's the most popular from site history that I have of people visiting South Shore Trails websites.
Really?
Yeah, it's the top one in the last 45 days.
Wow.
So do you think they need more parking there?
The parking, I think, is okay. I mean, part of the thing that's going to maybe help that out a little bit is they're talking about creating that dog area further up the street. And I think a lot of the people there are with their dogs. So I'm hoping that some of that will be alleviated. Not that we want to see people crossing the Driftway, but there's times of the year when the Widows Walk parking lot's not being used.
Oh, right,
And people can
park there.
park over there. And then, once the Widows Walk closes down, people can walk Widows Walk off-season. So it gives them another whole area to do things on. But I do think it would be good for maybe a couple of members to think about, maybe we could get someone to start to work at that. You know, Penny's pretty involved with the access stuff in the West End, but maybe a couple of us could get together, get out there, take a look. And then there's some lesser things. There's a couple areas that are pretty muddy, and I think we could just make some improvements. Maybe we could work with DPW to get in there. It's supposed to be packed gravel so that people could theoretically get over that with a wheelchair. So we just can't put down like some crushed stone. So we've got to do a little bit more than that, but maybe we could talk with DPW and see if we could get their help. There's really only 2 spots that are in tough shape, but if those were fixed up, it would make that accessible again. So, Bill's not here, so we could certainly sign him up for that tonight. But if anybody wants to do that, I'd be glad to get out there with them, and then we can start to work towards that end. You can let me know. All right? And go take a look at the Christmas trees out there. Are cool.
Those are nice pictures.
It's unbelievable.
Your pictures were great.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that a few times, and was a little concerned a couple of years ago. It seemed like people were leaving stuff behind, but it seems like they get picked up sometime after Christmas, and I don't know what started that tradition.
Oh, good, so they are picked up, okay.
Anybody knows, but it's pretty.
Yeah, it is.
All right.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.